Hello and welcome. In this video, I'm going to give some suggestions or some of my thoughts on how to potentially adapt aspects or elements of role-playing games to support your own self-discovery or personal growth. And I'm going to be using this game called, I may be pronouncing this wrong, Praedormitium, as an example for that. I bought this a while ago at a local game store. I really liked it because I like the idea of traveling to a dream realm. It just sounds very creative, very open-ended, and also because it integrates and uses tarot cards. So that's really fun. The book or the game starts off with an introduction. It goes through a little bit of world building to some extent, kind of sets up the landscape of this world, and then it talks a little bit about how it uses tarot cards, which is super cool. But I really want so there's a lot to be done with creativity in that sense, with world building. But what I really want to focus on is character creation. So I think that when we are using RPGs for the purposes of discovering more about ourselves, it can be really interesting or fun or helpful to create a character that has aspects of ourselves and is like us in some ways, but is also different in some ways. So there's lots of different ways to create characters, and there are entire books on character creation, whether it's for writing or for role-playing games. So let's just kind of keep this simple in terms of the mechanism that the authors of this game talk about here. And they talk about coming up with a defining statement, so a quote or phrase or a motto, to kind of ground like the sense of self. And how I think about it is the perspective or the worldview of this character, what they believe in, who they'd like to be, that kind of thing. So I was thinking about a creative way to use a deck to come up with that motto or that like belief system. And I just had this deck on my desk here. It's the Making Peace with Food card deck. It talks about, anti-diet strategies to end chronic dieting. I work a lot with emotional eating and weight loss. So thinking about, to create possibly a character related to that area would be to, take a deck like this. I was also thinking of using an affirmations deck or an oracle deck or any kind of deck that has like a statement on it, and then using that as the character's, motto or worldview or perspective. Another suggested strategy that might be helpful is to use like a quote that really inspires you or that really motivates you. And then kind of, you're kind of designing like an entire character around that. So I'm just going to choose a card here. So if I was going to design or come up with a motto for a character that was based on this card, it might be something like, I eat what I'm truly hungry for, right? So it's this idea of what would that character look like, or what would they be like, if they truly embodied, what the message of this card in particular. So if we're thinking of this character, if someone's struggling with emotional eating or weight management, and kind of practicing embodying, and really exploring what a character who truly nourishes themselves, and we could even extend that to, truly nourish oneself on a mind, body, and spiritual level. And then they get to explore that character in the context of this game, in the context of this dream world, where the player, whoever's playing this game, has a lot of agency and autonomy kind of over what their character is doing, and really gets to kind of explore that way of being. So if I'm going to use this card and come up with a defining statement for this character, I might write something like, I nourish myself, or mind, body, and spirit. I don't know, maybe like in a way that is aligned with my highest self. Then the next part is identifying what the game refers to as luminous traits, and I may be saying this wrong, tenebrous traits, I don't know. So luminous traits. So luminous traits describe the character when they are kind of at their highest, right, best self, right? So traits are probably being really intuitive, self-trust. And let's just say like connected, right? Connected to other people, relationships, nature, the seasons. They're kind of just really like connected with what they're embedded in. So I'll just put connected. And then the tenebrious, I don't know, tenebrous traits probably are like the negative, more negative. So tenebrious traits are when people, or when this character is kind of at their worst, right? And so if we really kind of extend this idea, right, that this is a character who nourishes themselves, you know, and this is kind of what they do, we can kind of, I mean, I guess there's lots of different ways to explore that. I'm going to explore it from the lens or the perspective of if we take that to an extreme, right? Yeah, so we can think of these kind of like as shadow traits, right? So if we take this to the extreme, it's probably like highly controlled and rigid. Let's just put rigid. Obsessive. And almost, I would want to say, like, ungrounded. Like, they almost kind of, I don't want to say they lose touch with reality, but it can kind of become impractical to always be, like, doing this. So, again, if we're taking it to that extreme, kind of like the shadow side is almost, like, ungrounded. That's what's just coming up for me. All right, so the next part of the character creation process entails drawing 3 major arcanas to represent past, present, and future of these of the character. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull out the major arcana from this Universal Oak Tarot. Let's see, 6 of Swords. All right, and then I just want to also note that there are a lot of ways to explore a character and a character creation process that is much more embodied than this. This is very cognitive. I mean, just, you know, thinking about improv, drama therapy, there are lots of different ways to explore a character in action. I'm not going to get into that in this video. This is really just kind of this basic idea of using this like kind of more intentional it's a much more intentional character creation process that we're doing, or that I'm kind of going through in this game. But we're also getting some spontaneity and some surprises with like random tarot draws, with a random card pull from the deck. And like I said, I just looked at my desk and like I just grabbed a deck that I had here. So there was some like a little bit of randomness in that deck grab too, but just kind of drawing inspiration from our environment. Okay, so this is past, which is the Tower. Present is Strength, and future is the Lovers. So you can certainly use like a guidebook if you have access to that. The book does give some brief like explanations on what how to think about using the cards, particularly in the context of this game. For example, the Lovers, the Lovers are a complicated card depending on the reading. Obviously, they can be read as pertaining to love, relationships, and emotional connection, but they can also represent a preoccupation with these things or struggle to balance values between two people. So again, and then you could kind of like, the idea is to create a brief narrative about your characters, past, present, future, noting the cards because there are some game mechanics in the context of the game where you can use them. I'm not going to get into that. But, you know, something happened in the character's past. This is where they are now. And then this is kind of like the potential or the future. And so again, for me, oh yeah, and then also I want to mention too, so whenever I use any type of cards, it always rests on my fundamental basic card play process and like my quote unquote rules of working in a card play oriented way. And one is that the cards always serve our greatest good, so they're never bad news. And the second is an emphasis on intuitive, like knowing, not so much like, oh, this is the Tower, I'm just gonna go straight to the guidebook. It's like there's this like really detailed like image, and like what does that bring up with you, right? So there's a little bit of, I don't know, sleeping. This also has like Rapunzel type of vibes to me. So it's almost like breaking free in some way. And so again, if I'm thinking about this in the context of like the character that I'm developing, the character that I'm creating, it's almost like breaking free. of like a really restrictive way of eating, or you know, eating in ways that don't serve someone, kind of like breaking free from that. Discovering one's own strength. So there's this like inner strength to some extent, that idea of like I was saying, being really aligned, being really like embedded with within one's context, really connected to nature, blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. Also like really aligned, right? And then this kind of goes to that negative space too, right? So like, and I just thought of that based on what I read in the guide, or in the game, on specifically the Lover's card, is kind of, it can go in a negative direction, right? And then kind of go into that obsessional place that I just wrote down if you know, this figure, this person isn't super careful with that. So that's just like very I didn't like think too deeply about this, but I just want to really kind of demonstrate how we can use this process of character creation to explore aspects or elements of ourselves in more creative, fictional ways, which kind of can help us to explore things that we might not be considering if it was just done in a really linear way. So that's kind of Praedormitium. It's a, I don't know if it's like complicated, but there's a lot more mechanics in the game, which I think can be really interesting. And it uses a DM and I think other characters. So I personally am interested in thinking about ways to adapt it and use it in a more like solo journaling role-playing game format. So more to come on that.